They say the best revenge isn't anger, it's silence. But let's be honest, sometimes the best revenge is watching the color drain from your ex's face in front of 500 of the city's elite. When Gavin left Alicia, he didn't just break up with her, he laughed in her face. He told her she was a placeholder until he found someone with status. He thought he had buried her, but he forgot one thing: true value isn't loud. While Gavin chased clout, Alicia was building an alliance with the most dangerous kind of power, the kind that doesn't need to shout. This is the story of how a discarded woman walked back into the lion's den, not as a victim, but on the arm of the man who owned the lions. The crystal chandelier above table 12 at the Gilded Lily seemed to vibrate, shimmering with a cruelty that matched the man sitting across from Alicia Vance. It was their 3rd anniversary, or at least it was supposed to be. Alicia had spent 3 weeks' worth of her salary as an archivist on the dress she was wearing, a subtle midnight blue silk that hugged her slender frame. She had felt beautiful when she left her small apartment. Now she felt like a stain on the pristine white tablecloth. "I don't understand," Alicia whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for her water glass. "Gavin, we just signed the lease on the townhouse. We talked about the future." Gavin Mercer, a rising star at Sterling and Finch Capital, wiped his mouth with a linen napkin, checking his reflection in the silverware. He didn't look sad. He looked bored. He looked like he was checking the time during a tedious business meeting. "Alicia, please." Gavin sighed, leaning back. His suit was a bespoke charcoal gray tailored to perfection, a gift Alicia had saved 6 months to buy him for his promotion. "The lease is in my name. You know that. And as for the future, let's be realistic. That was a fantasy. A placeholder fantasy." The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Placeholder. "A placeholder," Alicia repeated, her voice barely audible over the clinking of expensive cutlery around them. "I supported you through your MBA. I edited your thesis until 3 in the morning. I paid the bills when you were an unpaid intern, Gavin. I was there when you were nothing." Gavin's eyes narrowed, his handsome face twisting into a sneer that Alicia had never seen before. "And that is exactly the problem. You remember me when I was nothing. You're a reminder of the struggle, Alicia. I'm past the struggle now. I've arrived." He took a sip of his wine, a vintage Alicia couldn't pronounce. "Look around you, Alicia. Look at this place. Look at the women here." He gestured vaguely to a table nearby, where a woman with platinum hair and diamonds the size of grapes was laughing loudly. "I need a partner who fits the boardroom. Someone with pedigree. Someone who knows how to hold a room, not someone who smells like old paper and glue." "I smell like that because I preserve history," Alicia said, a spark of defiance igniting in her chest. "I restore things that people like you throw away." That was when it happened. Gavin threw his head back and laughed. It wasn't a nervous chuckle. It was a bark of genuine dismissive amusement. It was loud enough that the couple at the next table, the wife of a senator and her husband, turned to look. "You restore trash, Alicia," Gavin chuckled, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye. "You're a glorified dust cleaner, and you think you can stand next to me at the Founders Gala next month. You think you can walk a red carpet? You'd trip over your own feet." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a cruel hiss. "I'm doing you a favor. I'm dating Sienna Thorne now. Well, dating is a light word. We're merging." Alicia felt the blood drain from her face. Sienna Thorne, the daughter of the director of the board, a woman famous for 2 things: her family's oil money and her vicious temper. "You were cheating on me," Alicia stated, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "I was networking," Gavin corrected, signaling for the check. "And now the networking has paid off. You need to be out of the apartment by tomorrow night. Sienna wants to redecorate the guest room for her poodles." He tossed a heavy black credit card onto the tray the waiter presented. He didn't even look at Alicia. "Don't make a scene," he muttered as he signed the receipt. "It's pathetic enough that I have to pay for your dinner one last time. Consider it severance." Alicia stood up. Her legs felt like jelly, but her spine was steel. She looked at the man she had loved for 3 years, the man she had built up from a nervous, insecure student into this monster of arrogance. "You think you've arrived, Gavin," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "But you're still the same insecure boy who needs a rich daddy's girl to feel important. And be careful, when you treat people like trash, eventually you get taken out." Gavin laughed again. He actually pointed a finger at her, shaking his head as he stood up to put on his coat. "Oh, Elysia, you have no idea how the world works. Karma is a fairy tale poor people tell themselves to feel better about losing. Goodbye." He walked out. He left her standing there in the middle of the restaurant with half the patrons staring at her. The waiter, a young man with kind eyes, approached her cautiously. "Miss, are you all right?" Elysia took a deep breath. She didn't cry. Not yet. She picked up her purse, straightened her shoulders, and looked the waiter in the eye. "I will be," she said. "I will be." 3 weeks later, Elysia was living in a studio apartment that was smaller than Gavin's walk-in closet. It smelled faintly of damp plaster and curry from the restaurant downstairs, but it was hers. She had blocked Gavin on everything, but it was impossible to avoid him. His face was plastered on the business pages of every newspaper she walked past. Rising Star. Gavin Mercer to wed heiress Sienna Thorne in fall spectacle. They weren't wasting time. Elysia threw herself into her work. She worked at the Sterling Archives, a prestigious but dusty restoration firm in the old quarter of the city. While Gavin dealt in stocks and futures, Elysia dealt in the past. She fixed broken things. She mended torn canvases, rebound ancient books, and polished tarnished silver until it gleamed. It was a rainy Tuesday when the bell above the shop door jingled. Elysia looked up from her workbench, adjusting her magnifying spectacles. Standing in the doorway was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and dressed in a storm cloud. He was tall, well over 6 feet, wearing a black trench coat soaked with rain. He wore a cap pulled low, shadowing his eyes. He didn't look like their usual clientele. Their usual clients were fussy museum curators or elderly widows. This man looked dangerous. "We're closing in 5 minutes," Elysia said, wiping her hands on her apron. "I was told you are the best," the man said. His voice was deep gravelly, with a hint of an accent she couldn't place, maybe European, maybe just educated. "I'm competent," Elysia replied modestly. "What do you need?" The man walked to the counter. He moved with a strange grace, silent and heavy. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet pouch. He upended it onto the glass counter. Out slid a pocket watch, but it was a wreck. The gold casing was crushed, the glass face shattered, and the hands were bent at impossible angles. It looked like it had been run over by a tank. "Can you fix this?" he asked. Elysia picked it up gently. "This is late 19th century Swiss, a Patek Philippe complication." She examined the engraving on the back, but it was scratched out, deliberately obliterated. "This has been through a war." "2 wars, the man corrected, "and a fire." Elysia looked up at him. She couldn't see his eyes clearly, but she felt his intensity. "Why fix it? The cost of restoration would exceed the value of the materials." "Value isn't about materials," the man said softly. "It belonged to the only man who ever told me the truth. It stopped ticking the minute he died. I want it to tick again." There was a pain in his voice that resonated with the hollow ache in Elysia's own chest. She knew what it was like to hold on to something broken, because letting go felt like dying. "I can't promise perfection," Elysia said, pulling out her loupe to look closer. "The mainspring is snapped. The escapement is shattered. I'll have to hand machine new parts. It will take weeks, and it will be expensive." "Time is not an issue," the man said. He reached into his coat again and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the counter. "And neither is money. There is $5,000 in there as a deposit. The rest when you finish." Elysia's eyes widened. "Sir, this is too much. The deposit is usually—" "Do the work," he interrupted. Don't cut corners. If you need materials, call this number. He slid a plain white business card across the glass. It had no name, just a phone number. Who do I make the receipt out to? Elysia asked, grabbing her pen. The man paused at the door. He turned back, and for a second the yellow street lamp outside illuminated his face. He had a scar running through his left eyebrow, giving him a rugged, menacing look, but his eyes were a piercing, startling blue. Just call me Jaden, he said. And then he was gone, disappearing into the rain like a ghost. For the next month, the watch became Elysia's obsession. It was her escape from the reality of Gavin's engagement. While Gavin was likely tasting cakes and choosing floral arrangements with Sienna, Elysia was hunched over a microscope filing gears the size of a grain of sand. She poured her grief into the watch. Every time she felt the sting of Gavin's laughter, she polished a gear. Every time she saw a picture of Sienna clinging to Gavin's arm, she calibrated a spring. She was breathing life back into the machine. One evening late, the shop phone rang. Sterling Archives, Elysia speaking. How is it coming? It was him, Jaden. It's difficult, Elysia admitted, rubbing her tired eyes. The balance wheel was tricky, but I found a replacement from a donor watch in London. I'm assembling the movement tonight. You're working late, Jaden noted. I don't have much else to do, Elysia said a little too honestly. The man who hurt you, Jaden said abruptly. The tone wasn't inquisitive, it was factual. Elysia froze. Excuse me. You work with the focus of someone trying to forget, Jaden said. I know the look. I see it in the mirror. Elysia let out a shaky breath. He's getting married. To a very important woman. He told me I was a placeholder. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. A placeholder, Jaden repeated. The word sounded dark in his mouth. Fools often mistake diamonds for glass because they don't know how to hold them to the light. Finish the watch, Elysia. When it ticks, your time will start again. The line went dead. Elysia stared at the phone. It was a strange conversation, but oddly comforting. She went back to the watch. She set the final bridge in place. She wound the crown, her breath held tight in her throat. Tick, tick, tick. The sound was strong, rhythmic, alive. Elysia smiled for the first time in weeks. 2 days later, Jaden returned to collect the watch. When Elysia handed it to him, functioning perfectly, the mysterious man stared at it for a long time. He ran his thumb over the polished gold. You have a gift, he said, looking up at her. You see value where others see wreckage. It just needed patience, Elysia said. I have a proposition for you, Jaden said, slipping the watch into his pocket. There is a charity gala this weekend, the Winter Solstice Ball. Are you familiar with it? Elysia laughed humorlessly. Familiar. It's the biggest event of the year. Tickets are $5,000. My ex-boyfriend is going to be there. He's announcing his engagement. Yes, Jaden said, his eyes hardening. Gavin Mercer and Sienna Thorne. Elysia blinked. How do you know that? I know a lot of things, Jaden said. I need an escort for the evening. Someone who knows history, someone who can spot a fake in a room full of them, someone who isn't impressed by titles. You want me to go with you? Elysia asked, shocked. Jaden, look at me. I'm wearing a denim apron. I don't belong in that world. Gavin made that very clear. Jaden stepped closer. He towered over her, but he didn't feel threatening anymore. He felt like a fortress. Gavin is a boy playing with credit cards, Jaden said. If you go with me, you won't just be attending. You'll be the guest of honor. I don't even know your last name, Elysia whispered. Jaden smiled a slow, dangerous smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You will, and so will they. Meet me at the Ritz Suite 404 at 6:00 p.m. on Saturday. Do not worry about a dress. It's taken care of. He turned to leave. Why? Elysia called out. Why me? Jaden paused. Because you fixed the only thing that mattered to me. Now I'm going to fix something for you. Saturday arrived with a suffocating dread. Elysia had tried to talk herself out of going a dozen times. She was an archivist, a woman comfortable in dust masks and cardigans about to step into a pit of vipers wearing borrowed confidence. But every time she looked in the mirror, she heard Gavin's laugh. A placeholder. That laugh was the fuel she needed. At 600 p.m. sharp, she stood outside Suite 404 at the Ritz. The door opened before she could knock. The suite wasn't a room. It was a cavern of modern luxury. Everything was black marble, brushed steel, and floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city skyline. It felt cold, imposing, and expensive beyond comprehension. Jaden was standing by the window speaking low into a phone in a language that sounded like Russian but colder. He hung up as she entered. He was already dressed in a tuxedo that fit him so perfectly, it looked like a second skin. He looked devastating. "You're punctual," he said, assessing her threadbare coat and sensible shoes without a hint of judgment. "Good. We have work to do." He snapped his fingers and 3 people materialized from a side room. A severe-looking woman with a silver bob, a man with a makeup kit the size of a suitcase, and an assistant holding a garment bag that looked heavy. "This is my team," Jaden said. "They are the best in Europe. Tonight, Elysia, you are not restoring history. You are making it. I'll see you in 2 hours." He vanished into another room. For the next 2 hours, Elysia was poked, prodded, polished, and painted. They didn't speak to her. They worked on her like she was a priceless damaged sculpture they had to prepare for auction. Her mousy brown hair was swept up into an intricate architectural chignon that exposed the graceful slope of her neck. Her makeup was done to highlight her eyes, making them look larger, darker, more mysterious. Then the dress. When the silver-haired woman unzipped the bag, Elysia actually gasped. It wasn't just a dress. It was a weapon. It was an emerald green silk gown, the color so deep it looked almost black in low light. It was structured strapless, with a slit that ran dangerously high up her thigh. It was sculpted to her body, tailored within an inch of its life. As she stepped into it, she felt a transformation take hold. She wasn't the girl Gavin left at table 12 anymore. She felt taller, sharper. "And finally," the woman said, opening a steel briefcase on the bed, "from Mr. Croft's private collection." Elysia stared. Inside were earrings and a necklace that made her breath catch. Sapphires the size of quail eggs surrounded by diamonds that glittered like crushed ice. These can't be real," Elysia whispered, terrified to touch them. "They are the Romanov sapphires," the woman said calmly, fastening the cold gems around Elysia's neck. "They were thought lost during the revolution. Mr. Croft acquired them last year at a private auction in Macau for a significant sum. Do not lose them." Elysia looked in the full-length mirror. She didn't recognize herself. The woman staring back was regal, intimidating, and breathtakingly beautiful. The emerald silk made her skin glow like porcelain. The door opened and Jaden walked back in. He stopped mid-step. For the first time, his stoic mask cracked. His brilliant blue eyes traveled from the top of her hair to the hem of the gown. He didn't leer. He assessed her like a general assessing a newly forged sword. "Adequate," he muttered, though his voice was thicker than before. He walked over and stood behind her, their reflections side by side in the mirror. They looked like a portrait of power. The dark, dangerous man and the stunning, icy woman. "Gavin didn't want a partner, Elysia," Jaden said quietly, his eyes meeting hers in the glass. "He wanted an accessory. Tonight he's going to see what a real partnership looks like." He offered his arm. It felt like granite beneath the fine wool of his suit. "One rule tonight," Jaden said as they headed for the private elevator. "Don't smile unless you genuinely find something amusing. You don't need to please anyone in that room. They need to please you. Remember that." The entrance to the grand ballroom was a gauntlet of flashing lights. The paparazzi were screaming names, a chaotic wall of noise. "Sienna, Sienna, over here. Let's see the ring." Elysia watched from the darkened interior of Jaden's Bentley as Gavin and Sienna walked the carpet ahead of them. Sienna was wearing a heavily sequined gold dress that looked expensive but desperate for attention. She was clinging to Gavin, waving her left hand manically to show off a diamond that was large, vulgar, and somehow looked cheap. Gavin was beaming, soaking up the attention, looking every inch the successful Wall Street shark he pretended to be. He looked happy. That hurt. "Are you ready?" Jaden asked. His voice was calm in the chaos. "No," Alicia admitted, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Good. Fear makes you sharp." The driver opened the door. The noise of the crowd instantly doubled. Jaden stepped out first. The cameras went wild, but there was a different energy. They weren't screaming his name. They were shouting questions. "Mr. Croft! Mr. Croft! Is it true about the merger? Jaden, who are you wearing?" He ignored them all. He turned and extended his hand into the car. Alicia took it. When she stepped out onto the red carpet, something strange happened. A ripple of silence spread through the press corps, followed by an explosion of flashbulbs that was blinding. They didn't know who she was, and in their world, not knowing someone who looked like that wearing jewels, like that was a cardinal sin. "Who is she?" It was a whisper that became a roar. Alicia tightened her grip on Jaden's arm. He was her anchor. He walked with a slow, deliberate pace, forcing the photographers to wait for his rhythm. He didn't smile for them. He just exuded an aura of untouchable power. Alicia, remembering his advice, kept her face cool, her chin raised. 50 feet ahead, near the entrance doors, Gavin was finishing an interview with a fashion reporter. He was laughing at something Sienna had said. He casually glanced over his shoulder to see what the new commotion was about. His smile froze. It didn't fade. It physically locked onto his face, then slowly crumbled into an expression of utter slack-jawed confusion. He blinked once, twice, as if his brain was refusing to process the visual information. He looked at the dress, the way it clung to a body he thought he knew perfectly, but now seemed foreign. He looked at the sapphires glittering at her throat, gems worth more than his entire life's earnings. And then he looked at the man holding her arm. Alicia saw the color literally drain from Gavin's face. He went from tanned confidence to a sickly pale gray in the span of 3 seconds. Sienna noticed Gavin's paralysis and whipped around. Her eyes narrowed instantly. She looked at Alicia like a cat seeing a rival predator in its territory. As Jaden and Alicia approached the entrance, Gavin and Sienna were blocking the path. It was unavoidable. "Alicia!" Gavin's voice was a strangled squeak. He sounded like he had swallowed broken glass. What are you doing here?" Jaden stopped. He didn't look at Gavin. He looked over Gavin's head, as if the man was a mildly annoying piece of furniture placed in his way. "Enjoying the evening, Mercer." Jaden said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to drop the temperature around them by 10 degrees. "The same as you." Sienna stepped forward, thrusting her chest out, trying to eclipse Alicia. "And who is this?" she demanded, looking at Jaden, ignoring Alicia completely. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Sienna Thorne. My father is hosting this event." Jaden finally looked down at Sienna. It was a bored, dismissive glance that lasted less than a second. "I know who your father is," Jaden said simply. Then he turned his attention to Alicia. For the first time all night he smiled a genuine small smile just for her. "Shall we go inside, my dear? The air out here is getting stale." He gently guided Alicia past them. He didn't shove Gavin, but Gavin stumbled back nonetheless, as if repelled by a force field. Alicia caught one last glimpse of Gavin's face before they entered the ballroom. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost rise from the grave wearing a crown. It was better than she had imagined. It was glorious. The ballroom was a sea of old money and desperate new ambition. Chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the gilded ceiling. The air smelled of expensive perfume and power. The moment Jaden and Alicia entered, heads turned. It was the same reaction as the red carpet, a hush followed by intense whispering. Jaden guided her through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. People stepped out of his way. Important people. Senators nodded respectfully. CEOs of Fortune 500 companies paused their conversations to acknowledge him. "They're all looking at us," Elysia whispered, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her back. "Let them look," Jaden murmured, taking 2 flutes of champagne from a passing waiter and handing her one. "They're trying to figure out if you're a threat or an opportunity. Currently, they're leaning towards threat." They found a spot near the edge of the dance floor. Elysia could see Gavin and Sienna across the room. Sienna was furiously whispering into Gavin's ear, gesturing toward Elysia. Gavin looked sick. He was downing a scotch like it was water. He kept glancing over his eyes, darting between Elysia's face and the massive sapphire around her neck. He couldn't reconcile the dust-covered archivist he had thrown away with this vision in emerald silk. "You seem to be enjoying his misery," Jaden noted, taking a sip of his champagne. "Is that wrong of me?" Elysia asked. "It's human," Jaden said. "He tried to break you to make himself feel taller. Seeing that you are unbreakable, it destroys his narrative." The orchestra began a slow waltz. Jaden set his glass down and offered his hand. "Dance with me." Elysia hesitated. I'm not very good." "Elysia," Jaden said softly, pulling her gently onto the floor. "Look at me. Don't look at them. Just follow my lead." His hand on her waist was firm and warm. He moved with surprising grace for such a large man. As they spun, the ballroom became a blur of color and light. For a few minutes it felt like they were the only 2 people in the room. "Why did you really bring me here, Jaden?" Elysia asked, looking up into his intense blue eyes. "It wasn't just about the watch, was it?" Jaden tightened his grip slightly. "When I brought you that watch, I told you it belonged to the only man who ever told me the truth. That was my mentor. He taught me how to see value in things others discard." He spun her, the emerald dress flaring out. "I watched you for 3 weeks, Elysia. I saw you working late through the window. I saw the care you put into things that weren't yours. You have integrity. In this room." He glanced around disdainfully at the elite crowd. "Integrity is the rarest commodity of all. Gavin Mercer traded a diamond for a handful of gravel because he was too stupid to know the difference." Elysia felt a blush rise up her neck, but it wasn't from embarrassment. It was from being truly seen for the first time in years. The music ended. As they walked off the floor, a man approached them. He was older, balding, with the frantic energy of someone who knows they are in trouble. It was Michael Thorne, Sienna's father, the host of the party, the director of the board where Gavin worked. He looked terrified. "Mr. Croft," Michael Thorne said, his voice trembling, slightly, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. I didn't expect to see you here tonight. We weren't aware you were in the city." Jaden looked at Michael Thorne with dead-cold eyes. The temperature seemed to drop again. "I like to keep my movements quiet, Michael. You know that." Of course," Michael stammered. He glanced nervously at Elysia, then back to Jaden. "I heard rumors about the Asian markets. I hope everything is stable." Jaden didn't answer the question. Instead, he gestured to Elysia. "Michael, have you met my companion for the evening, Elysia Vance?" Michael Thorne looked like he might faint. He recognized the name. "Vance, but isn't that—" He looked across the room toward Gavin, who was watching them with wide-eyed terror. "Yes," Jaden said smoothly. "Gavin Mercer's former partner. The one he discarded to facilitate his merger with your family." Michael Thorne turned pale. Jaden leaned in slightly, his voice dropping so only Michael and Elysia could hear. "I find Mr. Mercer's judgment to be deeply flawed, Michael. He abandons valuable assets for superficial gains. It makes me wonder about the judgment of the company that just hired him." Michael swallowed hard. "Mr. Croft, I assure you Sterling and Finch is solid. We'll see," Jaden interrupted. "Enjoy your party, Michael. While it lasts. Jaden steered Elysia away, leaving Michael Thorne staring after them, looking like a man who had just received a terminal diagnosis. Elysia's mind was racing. The way Thorne had reacted. The fear in his eyes. "Jaden," she whispered as they reached a quieter corner. "Who are you?" Jaden stopped. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "My name is Jaden Croft, but in rooms like this they call me the Eraser." Elysia frowned. "The Eraser? Why?" "Because—" Jaden set his eyes drifting across the room to where Gavin was now anxiously talking to a panicked-looking Michael Thorne. "I find companies that are bloated, arrogant, and poorly managed. I buy them. I strip them down to their foundation. I erase them." He looked back at Elysia, and his eyes were incredibly intense. "And tomorrow morning, Elysia, my firm begins the hostile takeover of Sterling and Finch. By Monday, Michael Thorne will be out of a job. And Gavin Mercer." Jaden allowed himself a cold, hard smile. "Gavin Mercer will be the shortest employed junior executive in the history of Wall Street. He wanted to marry into power. He's about to marry into bankruptcy." Elysia stared at him. Her breath caught in her throat. The scope of it hit her. Jaden wasn't just rich. He was a titan. And he was about to burn Gavin's entire world to the ground using Elysia as the match. The ballroom was stifling despite the cavernous ceilings. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and the metallic tang of nervous ambition. Jaden had excused himself momentarily to take a critical confirmation call regarding the morning's operations, leaving Elysia alone near the towering ice sculpture of a swan. It was the opening Gavin had been waiting for. Elysia saw him approaching from the corner of her eye. He moved with a jerky, frantic energy, shedding the smooth corporate skin he usually wore. Without Jaden's imposing shadow acting as a shield, Gavin felt brave enough to strike. "Elysia," he hissed, sliding up next to her. He didn't look at her face. He looked at the sapphires. His eyes were wide, dilated, with a mixture of greed and confusion. "What is this? What is going on?" Elysia took a slow sip of her champagne, the bubbles crisp on her tongue. She turned to him, her movement languid and bored. "It's a party, Gavin. I believe that's what people do. They socialize." "Don't play dumb with me." Gavin snapped, his voice low but vibrating with anger. "Jaden Croft. The Jaden Croft." How did you even get in the same room as him? You fix old clocks, Elysia. You don't date billionaires." "Maybe he likes women who don't treat people like stepping stones," Elysia said coolly. "Or maybe he just appreciates quality, something you clearly lack the eye for." Gavin scoffed, running a hand through his gelled hair. "He's using you, you know. Men like that, they don't get serious with girls like you. You're a novelty, a little charity case he dressed up to annoy Michael Thorne. Once tonight is over, he'll dump you back in your dusty apartment and you'll be nothing again." "Is that what you think?" Elysia asked, her voice steady. "Or is that what you hope? Because from where I'm standing, Gavin, you look terrified. You look like a man who realizes he threw away a winning lottery ticket to pick up a counterfeit bill." Gavin's face flushed a deep, ugly red. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "I made the right choice. Sienna is a Thorne. She's royalty in this city. I'm going to be a partner at the firm by 30. I'm going to have it all. And you're just a prop." "Well, well, well." The voice was shrill and cut through the tension like a serrated knife. Sienna Thorne materialized behind Gavin. Her gold-sequined dress looked garish under the lights, and her face was twisted into a mask of pure venom. She held a martini glass a little too loosely. She was clearly drunk. "I leave you alone for 2 minutes, and you're cornered by the help." Sienna sneered, looking Elysia up and down. "Nice dress. Did you rent it, or is it a knockoff? It looks a bit last season." Elysia smiled. It was the smile Jaden had told her to use, the one that didn't need to please anyone. It's custom sienna, and the sapphires were a gift from the Romanov collection. But I wouldn't expect you to know that. I hear your family specializes in oil, not history. It's a dirty business, isn't it? Sienna's jaw dropped. She wasn't used to being spoken back to. She was used to fear. You little... She raised her hand, perhaps to throw her drink, perhaps to slap her. But before she could move, a heavy hand landed on Gavin's shoulder. It wasn't Jaden. It was Michael Thorne. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the last hour. He was sweating profusely. Sienna, stop, Michael croaked. Gavin, get to the stage. Now. What? Why? Gavin asked, confused by the fear in his future father-in-law's eyes. Because we need to announce the engagement now, Michael whispered frantically. We need to solidify the stock price before the markets open on Monday. Rumors are already leaking. Someone is shorting the stock, Gavin. Someone is dumping millions of shares. We need good news to stop the bleeding. Go! Gavin blinked, the gravity of the situation slowly sinking in. He looked at Elysia one last time, a look of desperate arrogance before grabbing Sienna's hand. Watch this, Elysia, Gavin spat. Watch me win. He dragged Sienna toward the stage. The orchestra stopped playing. A spotlight hit the microphone. Elysia watched them go. She felt a presence beside her. Jaden had returned. He smelled of rain and cold air fresh from the terrace. Is it time? Elysia asked quietly. Almost, Jaden said, his eyes fixed on the stage. Let him climb to the top of the ladder. The fall is longer that way. Gavin stood at the microphone beaming. He adjusted his tie, soaking in the applause that rippled through the room, applause that was polite but not enthusiastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Gavin began, his voice booming through the speakers. Thank you all for coming. Tonight is a special night. Not just for Sterling and Finch, but for me personally. I came to this city with nothing but a dream. And tonight I am proud to announce my engagement to the most incredible woman I have ever known, Sienna Thorne. He gestured to Sienna, who waved, flashing her ring. This marriage, Gavin laughed nervously at his slip of the tongue, represents a union of strength, tradition, and a bright future. A loud buzzing sound cut through the room. It wasn't the microphone feedback. It was phones, hundreds of them, simultaneously vibrating and chiming on tables, in pockets, in purses. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. People began checking their screens. The polite smiles vanished, replaced by frowns of shock and hushed whispers. Oh my God, a woman at the next table gasped. Sterling and Finch just suspended trading. SEC investigation, a man whispered back. No, look at the headline. It's a hostile acquisition. Gavin faltered. He saw the crowd's attention shift. He saw people looking at their phones instead of him. We have big plans, Gavin stammered, trying to regain control. Then the large projection screen behind the stage, which had been displaying a photo of Gavin and Sienna, flickered. The image distorted, then cut to black. A new logo appeared. A simple, stark white C on a black background. The logo of Croft Holdings. The room went dead silent. Jaden placed his hand gently on the small of Elysia's back. Shall we? He didn't walk to the stage. He didn't need to. He simply stepped forward into the center of the room, into the pool of light cast by the chandelier. His presence commanded more attention than the microphone ever could. I hate to interrupt a celebration. Jaden's voice carried effortlessly in the silence. He didn't shout. He projected. But I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding regarding the future Mr. Mercer is speaking of. Gavin froze on stage. He looked tiny. What is the meaning of this? Michael Thorne yelled from the side of the stage, though his voice cracked. The meaning is simple, Michael, Jaden said calmly. As of 10 minutes ago, Croft Holdings has acquired 51% of the voting shares of Sterling and Finch. We bought the debt. We bought the board. We bought the building. A collective gasp went through the room. You can't do that, Gavin shouted into the mic, his voice shrill. "We're a family company." "You were a failing company," Jaden corrected. "Managed by incompetence and fueled by nepotism. I don't tolerate either." Jaden turned his gaze to Gavin. It was a look of absolute crushing indifference. "Mr. Mercer, you spoke of a merger earlier. I'm afraid that's incorrect. There is no merger. There is an acquisition. And in my restructuring there is no place for placeholders." The word echoed. Placeholders. Elysia felt a shiver run down her spine. Jaden had remembered. He had used Gavin's own cruelty as the blade to cut him down. "Sienna," Jaden continued, looking at the woman who was now trembling with rage and humiliation. "I suggest you check the validity of that engagement ring. It was charged to the company account this morning, an account that is now frozen. Technically, that diamond belongs to me. I'll expect it on my desk Monday morning." Sienna let out a strangled cry and looked at Gavin. "You charged it to the company. You told me you bought it." I was going to pay it back with the bonus," Gavin stammered, backing away from her. "Sienna, listen." She slapped him. It was a loud, crisp sound that echoed through the microphone. The room erupted, not in applause, but in the chaotic noise of scandal. The photographers who had been bored moments ago were now in a frenzy, snapping photos of Gavin holding his cheek, Sienna storming off stage, and Michael Thorne collapsing into a chair. Jaden turned to Elysia. He offered his arm. "I believe the entertainment is over," he said. "Are you hungry? I know a burger place that stays open late. It has terrible lighting but excellent fries." Elysia looked at Gavin. He was standing alone on the stage, the spotlight highlighting his ruin. He looked at her. His eyes were begging. He mouthed one word, Elysia. She looked at him, really looked at him, and she felt nothing. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. He was just a small man in a suit that didn't belong to him. She turned her back on him. "I'd love some fries," she said to Jaden. And they walked out, leaving the chaos behind them. Monday morning in the financial district was usually a symphony of frantic energy, but inside the glass tower of Sterling and Finch it was a funeral procession. Security guards were everywhere, new security. They wore the insignia of Croft Holdings. They stood by the elevators, the exits, and the executive suites with clipboards and stone faces. Elysia walked through the lobby. She wasn't wearing the emerald gown anymore. She was wearing a tailored cream suit she had bought on Sunday with her own money. She looked professional, sharp, and confident. She wasn't there to work. She was there because Jaden had asked her to witness the final act. She took the private elevator to the top floor. When the doors opened, the chaos was palpable. Junior executives were packing boxes. Secretaries were crying. In the center of the open plan office stood Jaden. He was in shirt sleeves reviewing a stack of files on a desk that used to belong to Michael Thorne. He looked up when he saw her. "Right on time," he said. "Is it done?" Elysia asked. "Mostly. The board resigned at 9:00 a.m. Thorne is retiring to his estate in the Hamptons to avoid an audit. And our friend—" Jaden nodded toward a glass-walled office in the corner. Inside, Gavin was frantically stuffing things into a cardboard box. His stapler, a framed photo of himself, his lucky pin. 2 large security guards were watching him, arms crossed. He looked up and saw Elysia through the glass. He froze. Jaden tapped the glass with his knuckle. "Let him out." The guard opened the door. Gavin stumbled out, clutching his box. He looked terrible. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Jaden, then at Elysia. "Elysia," Gavin croaked. He walked toward her, ignoring the guards. "Elysia, please, you have to talk to him. This is insane. I was the top earner last quarter. You know how hard I worked. You helped me. You know my potential." Elysia stood her ground. "I helped a man who I thought had a dream, Gavin. I didn't help a predator who wanted to feed on everyone around him." "I made a mistake," Gavin pleaded, his voice cracking. "With Sienna, it was a mistake. I was blinded by the pressure. But we were good together, Elysia. Remember the townhouse? Remember the plans, I can fix this. I can get a job at another firm. We can start over. He reached out to touch her arm. One of the security guards stepped forward, but Jaden held up a hand. He wanted to see what Elysia would do. Elysia looked at Gavin's hand, the hand that used to hold hers, the hand that had dismissed her with a wave at the restaurant. Start over. Elysia laughed softly. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was a laugh of genuine disbelief. Gavin, you don't get it. You're not the victim here. You're not the hero who stumbled. You're the villain who got caught. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. You told me I was a placeholder. You were right. I was holding your place in reality while you lived in a fantasy. But I'm done holding it. I'm the main character of my own life now. And in my story, you don't exist. She stepped back. Goodbye, Gavin. Elysia, he shouted as the guards grabbed his arms. You're making a mistake. You need me. You're nothing without me. They dragged him toward the elevators. His shouts echoed down the hallway until the silver doors slid shut, cutting off his voice. Silence returned to the floor. Jaden walked over to Elysia. He leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. How did that feel? He asked. Like exhaling, Elysia said. She felt lighter than air. Good, Jaden said. Now to business. Elysia frowned. Business? I thought I was just here for the show. I bought this company, Elysia, Jaden said, gesturing around the office. It's a mess. The archives are in shambles. The historical records of the mergers, the deeds, the property titles. It's chaos. I need someone I trust to organize it. Someone who respects the past but knows how to build a future. He picked up a file and handed it to her. It was a contract. Head of Historical Preservation and Corporate Archiving for Croft Holdings. Elysia read the title. Her eyes scanned to the bottom. The salary was triple what she made at the museum. She looked up at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership, Jaden corrected. He stepped closer, entering her personal space, but this time it felt magnetic, not intimidating. I don't need a placeholder, Elysia. I need an equal. You fixed my watch. You fixed my perspective. I think we could fix a lot of things together. Elysia looked at the contract, then at Jaden. She saw the man who had stood in the rain, the man who had held her hand when the cameras flashed, the man who had burned down a kingdom just to show her she was a queen. She took the pen from the desk. One condition, she said, hovering the pen over the paper. Name it, Jaden said seriously. No more galas. At least for a month. I want to stay in and order pizza. Jaden smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile with his eyes fully crinkled. It was a beautiful sight. Deal, he said. Elysia signed the paper. As she put the pen down, Jaden took her hand. He didn't let go. They stood there high above the city, watching the world below them. Gavin was down there somewhere, lost in the noise. But up here, everything was quiet. Everything was clear. The watch in Jaden's pocket ticked steadily against the silence, a strong rhythmic heartbeat of a new beginning. Elysia Vance wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was the architect of her own fate. And this time she was building something that would last forever. And that, my friends, is why you never ever underestimate someone just because they're quiet. Gavin thought status was about money and noise, but Elysia showed him that true power is about integrity and having the right allies. Gavin lost his fiancée, his job, and his reputation in one night, while Elysia gained a future she actually deserved. It's the ultimate checkmate. If you enjoyed this story of karma hitting back instantly, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were in Elysia's shoes? Would you have forgiven Gavin, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.